inspiring you to set the marketplace ablaze in partnership with an awesome and limitless God. This is the Kingdom Driven Entrepreneur Podcast, and this isn't business as usual. Here's your host and Chief Fire Igniter, Shay Bynes.
Welcome back to the Kingdom Driven Entrepreneur Podcast. This is your host, Shay Bynes, and our goal here is to inspire you to operate your business completely yielded and in partnership with our awesome and limitless God. Today, my guest is Keeyana Avery with Agency 7 Public Relations Agency. Keeyana is like a little sister to me. Back when Igniters Mentoring first started years ago, she was one of the first entrepreneurs to join us. And I have personally enjoyed watching her go and grow in this adventure of doing business in partnership with God and really by His grace and getting rid of the grind. And so I wanted to have her on to share a little bit about what these past 4 years have been like for her in making this lifestyle shift and how she works in her business. Now, before we get started, I want to let you know that Igniters enrollment is now open through Friday at midnight. And we would love to have you join the community. Igniters is a global community of on-fire entrepreneurs who are doing business not just for God, but with the presence of God. And kingdom-driven entrepreneurship, it can feel like a lonely road because it's such a departure from the world's way of doing business. In fact, it's a departure from doing business as a Christian who happens to own a business. And the enemy would love nothing more than to create isolation and distraction for those who desire to really shift in doing business by the infinite power of His grace. But the power of the kingdom is amplified in unity. And so the beauty of Igniters is having that authentic kingdom community so you can stop second guessing yourself. You can stop suffering from the mind grind. You can access godly wisdom. You can get confirmation on what the Holy Spirit's speaking to you. You've got the beauty of accountability. You have mentorship to help you grow, go from one level of glory to the next, and doing business in partnership with God. It is love, it's support, it's safety, it's resources made available through authentic covenant community. So you do not have to do this alone, and you shouldn't do it alone. So head on over to kingdomdrivenentrepreneur.com/igniters and get all the details and sign up to join us before registration closes this Friday. Now let's get started with today's conversation with Keeyana Avery. Listen in and enjoy. Keeyana Avery, how are you, my dear?
I'm wonderful. How are you?
I'm doing great. You are one of, you're like an OG igniter.
Yes.
I think you go back to 2016, if I remember correctly.
That's correct.
In probably the second round of our Igniters mentoring. So you have been on this journey of walking out a partnership with God for a minute. You started this a while ago, and you've been growing and cultivating in this for some years now.
Yes, it's for some years.
Yes. So we're going to talk about that and explore that. Your PR company is, I think you told me, almost 9 years old now.
Yep, almost 9 years old.
Okay, so now let's start this chat by you sharing. I want to know about Keeyana running a PR company prior to. I want to know what it was prior to the shift. And then we'll start talking about how you have cultivated and grown over the years and what that's looked like for you in your business. But take us to the before picture.
All right. So I started Agency 7 in 2011, and I was still working in corporate America. And I thought that I was just going to do it as a side hustle for a while I climbed my way up the corporate ladder. And just to kind of, and I knew that I wanted to have an agency. I figured I'd just do it like later on when I'm like older and whatever. And then some things shifted with my job, and so I got let go from my job, and then I decided, okay, this was in 2012, and I decided, all right, I might as well just do this full time, right? And in my head, I'm thinking, because, I'm a Christian, I grew up in church, I'm like, well, this must be a sign from God. So, so I was trying, and I knew, like, when I started my company, I had said, like, oh, I'm going to do this for Jesus, right? And so I'm thinking, like, I'm going to do this for Jesus. And I was doing everything. Like, I was trying to run a company. I was going to every single event. Like, if there was an event, you could probably bet your bottom dollar I was there. So I was at all the networking events. I was talking to everybody, emailing everybody, setting up coffee dates, getting like every single business card I could get, and just sending crazy emails, like to people about whether they wanted to connect or letting them know about my services. And I was just doing all of the things. I was listening to all of the gurus. So I was in like all kinds of, and social media was a thing then, but it wasn't as big as it is now. So I was listening to all of the gurus, and I was following advice from people, and there were people that I was connected to, who were in business, not necessarily doing PR, but they were in business and have been in business for a while. And they were giving me all kinds of terrible advice. They were telling me, well, you need to do this or you need to do that. Or, I had people telling me, well, you aren't going to be able to, you need to just charge as little as possible right now. Like, you're not going to be able to charge the big bucks right away because nobody knows who you are. You just need to get some experience under your belt. And I'm like, okay, I guess, but I also have bills to pay. So there's that. But I was trying to do everything in my own power and my own strength, right? So I would wake up in the morning, and I was so stressed out, Shay, like so stressed out. I would wake up in the morning, like my brain going 1,000 miles a minute, thinking about, okay, like I'm up. What do I have to do? Because I'm thinking about, well, this bill has to get paid. This has to be taken care of. That has to be taken care of. So what am I going to do to make sure that it gets taken care of? And after a while, I was like, I can't do this anymore. So I'm going to go get a job. I'm going to
How long did you do that before you're like, it's time to go get a job now?
So I probably did that for about a year and a half, literally a year and a half before I was like, I'm going to go back to work because I can't do this. And the thing about that was that I was feeling like, because in my mind, I was thinking that I was doing this for God, right? And so I wasn't seeking God about my plans. I would just make something up, or because somebody said, this is what you need to do to grow your business. I was doing that and then praying about it after I did it, or I would say, oh God, this is what I want to do. So make this successful, and then just run off and do it.
Listen, I know that. I know all about that. Here's my plans, Lord, bless them.
Exactly.
Bless them in your name, Jesus.
Exactly.
I know a lot about that.
Oh, I know you do.
So you go back to work, but you were still continuing your business on the side at that point.
Mm-hmm.
And so were you starting to, but at what point where you're like, the way I'm doing this just isn't working? This whole idea of chasing all of these blueprints and pivoting on a dime because this isn't working fast enough, and then going after the next thing and all of those things. At what point was it like, this, I can't do it like this anymore? Like, how did you even find Kingdom Driven Entrepreneur? Like, how did all this stuff just like come together?
So, oh gosh, I'm so glad you asked that question, because it was so I think I realized like that the way I was doing it just wasn't working, but then I didn't know what I was supposed to be doing. Right. So I was just like, okay, I'm just gonna maybe something will fall out of the sky and let me know. I don't know. And I remember it was when I encountered Kingdom Driven Entrepreneur, and I actually found I think it was the Facebook page. And when I was randomly looking up, I think I was Googling something one day, and the Kingdom Driven Entrepreneur Facebook page came up. So I clicked on it, and then I was like, oh, this sounds interesting. Like, I've never even heard of a Kingdom Driven Entrepreneur. Like, what is this? So I started to read what Kingdom Driven Entrepreneur was all about. And it immediately just like, not to sound churchy, but my spirit leapt like when I read what was going, like what was there and what you all were doing and what you were about. And I was like, oh, this is it. Like, I've never heard anybody who is a believer talk about entrepreneurship like this. And so I think I started following the page, and then I joined the KDE Facebook group, but I was just lurking around. But I was just lurking around. And I was honestly, I was consuming like everything you all were posting in that group. I was like eating it up. I was gobbling it. And it was really, and I think that's when God began to talk to me and say, like, this is the way that this is supposed to be done.
Like I want to do this with you.
Exactly. Like, I want to do this with you, and you don't have to do this by yourself. Like, you don't have to do it alone. And I remember I would honestly, like, I would be at work, and then, what really happened was I found the KDE podcast. So I started listening to the KDE podcast, and I will never forget the very first episode I listened to was the one with Alicia, when she was talking about like building her bakery debt. Yes. And like my mind just literally exploded into pieces, because I was like, is this real? Like, is this real? Like, what is going on?
Yes.
And that was the very first podcast episode I listened to. And that's when it for real went off in my head. Like, this absolutely has to be done in partnership with God, or else it's not going to work.
Wow. That is a rather compelling, her testimony is rather compelling to make a case for doing business in partnership with God and just seeing God's favor work things out as you move with him. Absolutely. Yeah, that's a good first podcast episode to hear.
It was my very first episode, and I was hooked ever since then.
I love that. Okay, so for the benefit of people who haven't really made the shift yet, and they're just kind of thinking about it, and they're saying, this sounds good, but I don't know what this really looks like, I want you to go back to the beginning stages when, you and I was your mentor in Igniters. Back then, I was doing the mentoring for like the first year of Igniters.
You were.
I want you to talk about what it looks like for you and what this process was like for you in the early stages of doing this thing with him. And then we'll talk about the progression.
All right. So in the early stages, the process was tough. Because again, like, I wasn't used to this. And so what I had to come to understand was that there was a lot of stuff that I had to unlearn, right? So there were a lot of things that were deeply rooted, and a lot of things that were like just a part of me that, number one, weren't of God. And then number two, things that I had just been taught incorrectly. And so I had to deal with all of that. And so trying to reconcile that with surrendering everything to Jesus, surrendering everything to God, and like actually partnering with him when you think about what it means to be an actual true partner with someone. So like trying to let go of me doing everything my way. No, this is how it's supposed to be done, with just let me do this with you. It was tough, and it was really hard for me to kind of put the pieces together but I don't see a lot of people doing it like this. Like, I don't see anybody else, especially in my industry. There's nobody walking this thing out like this. Like, there really is no blueprint. So God, what am I doing? So it was honestly hard for me in the beginning, because I still wanted to, and I think because in my natural mind, I was trying to make sense of I was trying to make it make sense, basically. How does this make sense? And how can I compare this to what somebody on the internet said I should be doing, right? So that process was tough for me, but I think that process was necessary, because in that process, God did a lot of pruning. So it was a lot of getting rid of a lot of information. And like I said, there were a lot of things that I had to also deal with personally
Let's talk about some of those. Like, talk about some of the things that God had to just like untangle with you to get you to a point of freedom to even embrace this walk.
Yeah. So a lot of the things that God had to untangle with me, and I know you are going to be able to relate to this too, was the biggest thing was my sense of trust, especially when it came to him. So he had to really just work on me with my trust. And I had to be honest with myself about where my relationship honestly was with him. Like, okay, I'm saying I know God, but do I really know God? So he had to deal with me on our relationship status, on the trust. And then there were a lot of different heart issues that he had to work with me on, like just realizing that, okay, like one of the things that I think he brought up is, and I don't think I would have ever considered myself to be selfish, but he showed me in certain areas where I was really still being selfish. He showed me in certain areas where there was pride, like where I didn't even notice or realize there was pride trying to take over in certain areas. And then he showed me, where I was dealing with things like rejection. And I think that was a big thing for me too, because I wanted to hold on to what the world was saying, because in my mind, that's what was accepted. And I wanted to look like what everyone said that I should look like. And God's like, no, I'm trying to do a new thing here. Like, and you're not supposed to look like this. And in my mind, I was like, but what are people going to think, God? Like, I can't go out here just being the only one in the water looking like this. And what are people going to think? And out of that rejection, he really dealt with me concerning like my issues with my people issues. So that it was a lot.
It was a lot, right? But in the process of that, as each of those things are kind of dealt with and as each heart issue is healed, it just helps you more and more to go deeper and deeper in the ability to trust. And it's not even just like trusting God. It's trusting that you hear God, trusting that when you move, that if I don't quite get it right, that he's there to course correct, and that there's no shame in that. And like, it's like there's so much in that.
Absolutely.
You didn't mention, I'm going to bring it up, right? You already know what I'm about to bring up.
Come on, let's talk about it.
So there's this one little thing, which this would be connected to trust, I would think.
Yes.
I think this was connected to trust. So, y'all, Keeyana had this job. She had her job. When I met Keeyana, she had her job. She had her her business on the side. And then she had this part-time other job at Old Navy. Keeyana, how many hours a month were you on the schedule at Old Navy?
I was literally probably on the schedule like 4 hours per month.
4 hours
Not even a week, a month.
A month. So she had this 4-hour a month gig at Old Navy. Let me tell you something funny about the Lord. So I would have conversations with Keeyana, and I would really want to be talking to her about something else. But when you allow the Holy Spirit to just like do what he wants to do, you're going to talk about what he wants to talk about. And Keeyana, I don't think that for about 6 weeks that we talked about much of anything other than me talking to you about this Old Navy job.
Yep.
And why are you still there? What is happening? Why won't you release it? And all of that. Talk about what God did through all of that too.
Yeah, so that was a big thing. And it's funny that you bring that up, because I'm like, why do we have to keep talking about Old Navy? Like every time you would bring it up. And I'm just like, and the thing about that is, even though I was like, oh, it's not really a big deal, I think further down the line, God was really like, it is a big deal. And this is why Shay keeps talking to you about it, because you need to just let it go. And in the process of that, like you were saying, it was a trust thing. And God was showing me how, like, me trying to hold on to little things, like I can't progress and get to the space that he wants me to be at, because I'm trying to hold on to things that are no longer, things that are dead. Like I'm holding on to dead things when he's over here doing a new thing. And he's like, how can I give you what I have over here if you won't let go of what's back there?
Yeah. Yeah. So good. So good. And so let's fast forward a bit. So yes, in the beginning, all kinds of stuff. And, of course, that's for the rest of our lives, right? Because God's always working on something. He's always working on something with us.
Absolutely.
Just the way it is. Just the way it is. But talk about, once you're able to kind of embrace this and really start to walk it out, talk about what this has looked like in the industry of doing PR work with your clients and the operations of your business and walking this thing out and going to full-time business even now. What has it looked like for you to really do business in a way that is in partnership with him, that's led by Holy Spirit and really empowered by him? What are some of your favorite instances of that would kind of demonstrate what that looks like for you in PR?
Oh, wow. So I would say, and I think I shared this story, a little bit of this story with you. So, fast forwarding to where I am now, I think that one of the things that I thought when I started doing my business full time was that it was just gonna immediately just blow out of the water, right? But like you said, there were things that God still wanted to show me and things that he still wanted to teach me. And I had to get to understand that me doing my business full time wasn't only about me doing my business full time, if that makes sense. Like there were other reasons why God had called me out of a traditional 9 to 5. And so in getting that and registering that, now walking through this process, it has been I honestly can say, and it might sound cliche, but this has been the best time of my in business and of my life, because I know that I'm surrendered to him. And of course, because I'm his kid, he's going to take care of me and everything else. Right. And so I think my favorite instance has been, and this is another moment where it kind of just clicked for me. Okay, yeah, this is really what this is about, is shortly after I had my son, Eric, and I remember, so I had told myself I was going to go on a maternity leave. I'm I'm going on a maternity leave. I don't care what the rest of these people are doing, because I'm a first time mom, and I just was I need that time. And so going on maternity leave, I remember thinking, okay, God, how am I supposed to manage raising my son? Because my biggest thing was I didn't really want to put him in daycare at that young of an age. And I'm I want to be here with him, but I also am ready to get back to doing the work, right? I'm ready to get back to business. So how am I supposed to manage taking care of this child and business as well? So of course, those old things start to creep back up, and I'm thinking in my mind, okay, I could do this, 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 and this. I see these women doing it like this on Instagram, and God is nope, just stop. And I remember being on one of the group mentoring calls for Igniters, and someone asked a question to you about managing schedule. How do you balance and manage your schedule? And I remember typing in seconding that question, yeah, because I'm trying to figure this out too. And you specifically said, Keeyana, all you need to worry about is taking care of that baby. And I'm okay, God, I hear you, because I had been talking to God about that. And that's literally what he was telling me. Just focus on being a mother right now, and just do what you can do in terms of your business, and let me handle the rest. And so this is where my favorite part comes in. And after that moment, that's when I was okay, I'm surrendering again. Because honestly,
I love that. I'm surrendering again. I love that.
I'm surrendering again, because this is still a process, right? Yes. I am surrendering again, because I'm not Superwoman. I don't want to be her. You didn't call me to be her. So God, you have to help me in this, and I'm going to do what I can do. And so after that moment, I think maybe a few months after that, I started to get and it was just crazy how like I just started to get work coming in, like, and I wasn't doing any form of marketing. I wasn't advertising myself. I was barely posting on social media about anything because I had a little baby at home. And I started to get like, I ran into somebody who I used to work with at one of my really old jobs, not on Navy, but it was another job. I ran into her and I had gone to a banquet to support a friend, and I ran into one of my ex-coworkers, and she's like, "Oh, I'm so glad I saw you. One of my clients actually needs your help." And it turned into a fruitful opportunity. And then I had like it just started spiraling from there. And because I decided to surrender again,
Yes.
that really has been probably one of my favorite moments in walking this out, is just seeing that it's not just hocus pocus, if you will, or it's not just like a one-time thing. Like this is a lifestyle. Like this is a process. And as you continue to go in the like God will continue to honor his promises, and he will continue to take care of you in every situation and in every season of your life.
Yeah, that's so good. That's so good. I love seeing just the faithfulness of God. Like when you have those, because that was very similar to what I experienced after having my last one with Malia, and the time after I gave birth to her, and then released Grace Over Grind, the Grace Over Grind book. That next year and a half. I mean, I just put her in school not that long ago, but those were some that our biggest season of acceleration happened in the time that I only had like 10 to 15 hours a week available to do the work. Yep. That's it. That's all I had. And that was our biggest season. Like that was our greatest season of acceleration. And in every area, people who come into the community, revenue went up 2.5 times. Then the next year went up another 2. It was like, and for that whole year, all I had was 10 to 15 hours. And so you saw the faithfulness of God like that. And it was funny because when I said that to you, it's like that's what I saw for you. It was just like, she's going to see the faithfulness of God where she brings the little bit that she has, and he's going to breathe all over that. And he's going to do way more than she could ever have done while she's taking care of that baby.
Exactly.
So you got to see him as the source of your provision.
As the source of my provision, because
like for real.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
For real. Because they're like, I couldn't even make that. There's no way that I could have done this on my own. Like no way at all.
That's so good. Now let me ask you this, because you talked about earlier how you were, similar to how I was years ago. It was kind of like when I was in real estate, I still am a real estate investor, but when I was learning real estate investing and I was kind of coming up in the business, it was chasing after every strategy, every webinar. Who has a breakthrough in the real estate investing? Let me see what I can learn. Oh, what's their marketing strategy? Okay, all right. I'll hop off to this one and off to the next webinar and all of those things, right? And when you actually shifted to like, okay, God desires to be involved in this. I can sit with him. He has ideas. Like he can lead and guide me. How did that shift for you in terms of even how you dealt with decisions and whether, the strategic aspects of what you're doing in business? And has he led you in some unusual ways that's kind of seemed to go counter how you would have done them in the past, but yet you see the fruitfulness of following the leading of the Lord and what you're doing?
Absolutely. So I think the biggest thing for me has been just because my industry is all about image, my industry is all about marketing, my industry is all about get yourself out there, like make sure you're doing this, like do all of the things. People need to know you here. You need to be doing this. One of the things that God had really told me was like, you need to just kind of, for a second, I need you to just be still, right? And to most people, that doesn't make sense, especially in like my PR is all about relationships, like building relationships, having relationships, who can help you to get the results that you need. And so for a moment, God was just like, I just need you to be still. Like, you don't need to go to this event. You don't need to go to that event.
Was this prior to Eric? Was this prior to baby?
It was prior to Eric and even after Eric. So it was prior to having him. And then even after having him, there were certain stuff God would just be like, you don't need to be a part of that. Like, it's fine that they want you to, but you don't need to be a part of that. And then what I started to see also was that as I consulted him on things, there were certain things that he would just shut down without me even having to do anything. Cause he's like, yeah, cause I know if I don't take care of this, you'll probably find yourself over here. So
I'll just close that door.
Yep. I'm just going to close this door. And then even the way that he just me being able to relate with my clients. And so the clients that I work with, all of them right now are like family to me, right? So I work with them, I'm close to them. And in my industry, they're the big agencies, that's kind of unheard of. Like, I mean, they treat their clients well, but their clients aren't necessarily going to be able to talk. Like, I have clients that, I talk to and I'm able to give them advice about stuff that has nothing to do with their business, right? And so for most people, they would say, don't mix that with
Don't
business.
Mix their personal in your business and all of that, right?
Absolutely. Don't mix their personal with business and don't do this. But God has really shown me that as I rely on him and that as I consult with him, and the biggest thing for me has been, and I don't know, and it's really not any of my business what other people do in their businesses, but really being able to sit down and pray for my clients and pray for their business and pray over their businesses. I think that has really been like a big shift for me in a different way of doing things than the norm. Right.
Yeah. That's so good. I love it. So what's God talking to you now about with business? Like, what's the now thing for you?
Ooh, so the now thing for me is, especially with with the Rona, as we were talking about, with the Rona, like with everything going on, the biggest thing for me right now is how am I going to be a solution right now in this moment? Like, how can I be an Esther to the people who need a right now solution? For what am I going to do in this time? So he's really just been kind of talking to me and showing me. And I mean, it's crazy because I'm like, this has to be from God because there's no way I would have thought about this on my own. So he's just has given me things that I think are going to really be able to help people, not even necessarily on like the corporate level, but like everyday average business owners. He's really just given me some stuff that would be able to help them. And so I'm really excited about that. And so right now, I think that that's kind of where my focus is going to be, is really trying to put it together and implement some solutions that people can use right now because they need it.
Yeah. So good. Okay. One last thing. Here, do me a favor. It's going to be an Igniters commercial type of thing. But
oh, yeah. I'm ready.
What I want you to share is about the difference that it makes for you to have, you talked about earlier on about, well, I don't see people, you're like, I don't see any people operating this way in business. I want you to talk about the value of community, that you've experienced since being a part of Igniters.
Oh, wow. I mean, I just, there honestly it's very hard to put into words like the value that I have experienced, but just being able to, number one, have a group of like-minded individuals who desire to see the heart of the Father, orchestrated here on the earth, like come to fruition in business. That has, number one, been the best value to just have a group of people, because I say all the time, like, y'all are my people, like, and just to feel like I'm at home. Like, Igniters makes me feel like I'm at home, and I know that I can be myself when I am, in the community talking to people who are in Igniters. And even if it's like we may not talk like every day, but just being able to have that safe space to go to, that has tremendous for me. And I think being able to also have people who not only a safe space, but people who will hold you accountable.
Yeah.
And hold you accountable in every aspect of the word being held accountable. So if it's something like, and I'm serious, like people who will hold you accountable and call you out when you know that you're being mediocre and you need to rise to the occasion, or people who will hold you accountable when you say, I have a goal to meet and I need somebody, like I need y'all to help me do this. It has just been tremendous to see, and the love that everyone has for each other, and it's genuine. Like, it's just been tremendous to see a group of people who are on the same page, who have the same heart, and who really just want to just do business in partnership with God. Like,
Yeah.
that has been an amazing experience for me. And I think it definitely has shifted the course of not only my business, but it's shifted the course of my life in general.
I love it. I love it. Thanks for sharing. How do people get connected with what you're doing?
Yes. So if you want to know more about Agency 7, you can go to www.agency7, that's AgencySevenPR.com. So www.agency7pr.com. You can check out the website to see what we're up to. And you can also connect with me on social media. I'm on every platform at Keeyana Avery. So that's Keeyana Avery. So you can connect with me. I hang out a lot on Instagram and probably Facebook. So Instagram and Facebook.
I appreciate you, love you dearly, and thanks for sharing your story.
Thank you for letting me share.
Thanks for joining us on the Kingdom Driven Entrepreneur Podcast. If you've enjoyed what you've heard today, we encourage you to subscribe and spread the word. And don't forget, you can gain access to even more resources, plus a thriving community of fire starters by visiting our website at kingdomdrivenentrepreneur.com.